Welcome to American Griefcast. I'm your host, Sean Humphreys. American Griefcast is a long-form discussion with comedians about grief and loss. Most of the great humor in life is built on tragedy and pain. So I wanted to explore the idea of pain with some of the funniest people I know. And that's what we're doing here today, exploring pain with funny people. Today's guest on American Griefcast is Izzy Salhani. She's a Chicago-based actor and comedian. She's a member of the Death Squad and a roast battle veteran. You can find her on all the social medias at Lucky Salhani, Salhani. And here she is. Izzy Salhani. Did I get it close?
So close. You're there. You're pretty much there. The H is actually silent in French. So when people don't pronounce it, I'm like, yeah, why not? We'll go the French way. Yeah. Or the Lebanese way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I think being I can get Latino last names great because I grew up in California. But
nice.
Anything outside of...
No, dude, it's totally cool. My mom pronounced our last name wrong for like several years of my parents' marriage. And my teachers used to have to come up to me and be like, what's your last name?
That's awesome.
Because my parents would go to parent-teacher conferences and give them two different pronunciations.
That's kind of amazing. But also you're, in a weird way, a person of two worlds.
Yeah.
It's on so many levels.
Yeah. My dad's an immigrant, and my mom was born and raised in America, and she was a special human being. She was pretty awesome, but she died on election day. And
crazy, right?
It's so crazy. My dad is a political analyst, so he was born overseas. He was raised in Beirut. He grew up in a war zone, essentially. Wow. He's got scars from that. He's got PTSD.
Wait, so was he Lebanese journalist in Lebanon and then eventually came to...
Yeah, so my parents met in Cairo on the street. He went up and asked my mom to light a cigarette, and it was like, that was it.
Love at first sight.
Love at first sight. That's just what my dad says. My mom was like, I was getting divorced and he was the rebound. But they hit it off from there. Like, my dad went overseas. He went back to work, and then he went back to the States to go visit, and he actually went to go visit her ex-husband and was like, hey, I'm going to the States. And her ex-husband was like, you know who'd love to see you? My ex-wife.
Wow.
And then gave the phone number away.
Wow.
And my dad called her up, and he went to go stay with her, and then her cat peed in his suitcase.
That's, I'm going to say, those are those moments where you're just like, okay, there's something here.
Fate is pulling you together because a cat peed in your suitcase, and now you can't catch your flight.
Oh, I love it. Because you don't want the drug-sniffing dogs to smell cat pee on your luggage. Yeah,
you're never getting out. When you're Lebanese at the airport, you're never getting out of the country. You don't want that
last name with anything getting on this drug-sniffing dog's radar.
Dude.
I mean, I also think maybe cat pee might be an element in bomb making. I'm not sure.
Maybe C4.
Wow, that's
a lot of it.
It sounds very much like Casablanca almost. There's like they're in a culture that's they're in Egypt, so it's kind of foreign to both of them.
It's a little beyond more from my mom than my dad.
Yeah.
My dad was pretty used to traveling at that point.
Okay.
He was a photographer. And he started his career at 18, and so he would just go around shooting wars and things that related, the politicians that related to those wars. And I'm sure while he was there, he was making fake press passes and sneaking into buildings he wasn't supposed to be in. He snuck onto Air Force One once. My dad's kind of a badass. Crazy shit. He hung out of a helicopter upside down and got
great photos of.
He got great photos, and now he's an honorary Marine for it. And my mom, actually, they just honored her, not intentionally. My dad took some photos of her and the Italian Army together.
Wow.
And he just went to go commemorate some anniversary of the Italian Army. And her old photo popped up in the slideshow they were doing.
So, okay, we're going to go to the dark side, but I'm going to give you a little more compliment. I mean, one of the reasons why I was so excited when Al suggested that we talk is that I find you to be one of the most sensitive and honest performers while still being able to mine comedy out of the tragedy of your life, and it made me feel like I was thinking about this on the way here. I've had a lot of tragedy in my life, and it makes me a little bit fearless. It makes me like, I've had guns pulled on me, whatever. Like, I don't give a fuck. I can go on stage and talk to a bunch of hipsters and say something maybe inappropriate and be like, well, yeah, what's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah.
They're going to, somebody's going to unfriend me on Facebook. No, whatever. I think that probably partially your background, but also this your mother's death has maybe, you tell me, but has maybe even strengthened. I was there at the patio at the Bomb Mic when you first came back and started talking about it, and I mean, obviously I could feel a transformation, but I could also feel that there was something oddly more settled about you,
Yeah, it gave me this weird peace of mind. Like I've been through a lot of tragedy in my life too. Like I've been raped. I've been through like abusive relationships. I get chronic migraines, so there's this kind of weird element of PTSD attached to those migraines because they never really figured out,
like cluster headaches or something.
Kind of.
Okay.
It's like having a hangover every day, and they never really figured out the cause. And more recently, like new studies have come out, and there's like this new drug on the market that I'm trying to see if I'm like eligible for and stuff. But having my mom die kind of gave me like this like new lease on life, and this realization that like my life was really short, and if I didn't use the time properly, that it was all going to kind of disappear. And I didn't want my mom's death to affect me the same way those other tragedies had. Like I felt like I'd always let those other tragedies kind of like define my life and like take things away from me. Mm-hmm. And I wanted my mom's life to be a gift. And she was like really proud of the fact that I kind of just dropped everything and moved out here. And I wasn't going to give all that up to go home and be like, well, she's dead now. I better, start my life again in a 9-to-5 and take care of dad and all this stuff. So I just started writing about her life and how her life affected me, and, trying to find the humor in her passing, because my dad's a political analyst. Mm-hmm. So her dying was coincidental and ironic on so many levels, because like we would sit there, we would watch politics, and we would discuss politics. And one of the things my mom and I talked about a lot before her dying was the fact that Trump was probably going to become president, how terrified she was of it.
Oh, they were living in, or she's living in Virginia at the time?
They were living in West Virginia. They'd gone to retire because it's like real estate out there is super cheap right now.
And it's a red state, right?
And it's a red state, but it's where my grandparents lived. So that's
her parents.
Yeah, her parents are from there. So it's kind of like her
It'd be
making
weird if your dad's parents.
Nope. No Lebanon, West Virginia. So they moved back there, and it was kind of like meaningful in the fact that like their votes actually mattered for for the first time in a while. I mean, well, Virginia's a swing state, so their votes mattered there too, but they have a little bit more of a punch in a place where like the pool is mostly red. And when they voted early, and then she died that morning while they were still.
So she had the opportunity to attempt to slay the dragon.
She didn't get to see the election results. She died.
It happened. She died while the anticipation.
While the anticipation was building, while Clinton was still ahead in the polls. I like to say that she died with hope, because she still had faith that things were going to go well. And because I would always tell her, I was like, don't worry, like California's voting for Clinton, like this entire state's going to carry the country. And then as I'm leaving the voting booth, I was like, I think I'll call my mom today.
Wow.
Because my whole family's kind of estranged. Like my parents like talked about getting divorced for a really long time. They never finished getting divorced, but they told my brother that they did. And we took opposite sides. Like I took my dad's side, he took my mom's side. And then my brother had been trying to call me all morning. I was like, I'm not going to talk to you.
Wow.
And then I left the voting booth, and I was about to call her when I had this voicemail. And I checked the voicemail.
Okay, so this, oddly enough,
Yeah.
This is exactly kind of what I want to say. The first question I like to ask is like, what's the moment? And this is the moment where I'm going to be dramatic, where your life changed, where, because the moment I found out about my father's death, it is absolutely seared in my memory. So this is Take us to that moment.
It's
I hate to be. It's funny.
No,
it's
no,
weird.
no, no. It's
because
crazy because
we're comedians. I feel like I want to play the silly and the
no, because it's a very silly situation. I was walking. I was standing outside of a Fat Burger. I just made an Instagram post because I put on my I voted sticker. And I was like, man, how dumb is our country that the only thing that gets us to vote is being rewarded with a sticker?
Yeah.
And so I made an Instagram post about that. And then I was going to go online and be like, hey, Mom, look at my Instagram post. And I opened this voicemail. And my brother's like, hey, she fell. She hit her head. She's in the hospital. She's not going to make it. And I was standing outside this Fat Burger being like, man, he can't be original about anything. It's like he stole this right out of a script of ER.
Yeah.
And I called him back. I was like, this is a joke, right? My brother and my dad, they play very mean jokes. Like
that's a level of prank that they would play on you.
I feel like
Mom fell and hit her head. Snicker, snick. Oh my, wow.
Yeah. Well, we used to call my mom on like my brother's birthday and be like, hey, Justin broke his leg. He's in the hospital. Like we used to do some very mean things. My dad once hid under the staircase and set out a radio and convinced my brother that he was stuck in the radio.
Wow. So it's because one of the reasons why I'm doing this is because I think people don't talk about how they feel. Like honoring the dead person, yes, but it's really to me more about how people feel. And then in a weird way, this is DABDA, denial, acceptance, blah, blah, blah. This is the denial. Oh, he's just playing whatever. Yeah. It's a joke. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that denial stretched, too, because even though I got him on the phone and he was like, look, I'll buy your plane ticket. You can come say goodbye, or you don't have to, whatever you want to do. And I was like, of course I want to come say goodbye. But I just, it felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. Like I'd been punched in the stomach and the head and, all these other places. Like I could barely breathe. I'm standing outside of this Fat Burger, crying. I'm sure people are staring at me being like, man, did her burger not come out right or something? And I just didn't know what to do. And I was closer to my friend's house than I was my house. So I walked to his place. Yeah. This was the only person I knew when I first moved here. He's like an old family friend. He knew my mom. My mom used to come take care of him and babysit him, and our families would play together. And so I told them the news first, and he was like, well, smoke this joint so that you can feel not shit. And I'm waiting for my brother to buy me a plane ticket.
Yeah.
And we get super high off of this joint, and then my brother calls me back and he's like, hey, your plane leaves in a couple hours. And I was like, shit. So I had to but I'm high and I'm still processing it.
Sure.
And I wasn't it didn't help with the whole processing of it. It was making me kind of get no, I don't think at all. It made me
sometimes get anxious.
Well, it didn't make me anxious. It's I didn't even feel high. I just kind of felt sedated.
Yeah,
it was taking a sleeping pill, kind of, and taking a Benadryl and not being able to fall asleep. Ambien without the hallucinations. And I got home. I called Al actually, and Al took me back to my apartment. I packed a suitcase. He took me to the airport.
And you just kind of numbly
I'm just numbly moving around. He saw, people kept calling my cell phone and, giving their condolences.
Isn't that, okay, I'm going to say this.
I was one of the last people to find out.
Isn't that crazy? So for me, that when I was receiving condolences when my father passed away, part of it for me, I was feeling like, okay. But then also part of me is like, why do you keep fucking reminding me of this thing? This terrible, awful thing. Stop telling me about it. That's the feeling that I had a lot with the. And then there was also an arc where at the end of it, and as some of the pain is fading, I'm like, oh. Thank you for helping me remember.
Oh, yeah. No, it was really sweet that so many people reached out, but it felt like I hadn't even been to the hospital yet. So for me, it wasn't real. I was still very much in this state of being like, oh, when she, feels my skin, hears my voice,
come back,
she'll wake up and she'll, Clinton they're going to fix the election results. Clinton's going to be president.
All kinds of denial, all kinds of magical thinking.
I was it's going to be great, We're going to celebrate a new democracy in West Virginia.
Mom's going to be alive. She's going to need some rehab, though. We're going to take her for walks in the park. I'm going to be there for her. Finally, I'm going to be there for her.
It's going to be great. it's going to be great. It's going to be the best. And then I get to the airport, and I'm stoned. I've been crying for 5 hours. I look like
Your
a
last
complete
name
total.
Is...
Yeah, my last name is Arab. I look like a total train wreck. I don't have an ID because I had lost it. And I get to the airport and they're like checking in. I'm like, I have to go to a funeral. And they were like, oh, bereavement, right this way.
Bam. It's
I just get on the fucking
It's a magical pass.
Yeah.
Oh, you're in pain?
Yeah.
We're going to let down our corporate guard
Well,
for
lucky
just
for
a
me,
second.
I look like a white woman.
Yes,
so.
you can pass. So that's, and I feel like also like you're pretty tiny, so it's like you seem like less of a
non-intimidating.
threat. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It's like letting a child onto an airplane.
And you have
although that's what ISIS uses mainly as suicide bombers, so I'd be more careful in the future if I were them.
Also, you have whimsical hair. Was your hair as whimsical?
I was wearing a hat.
Oh no! Hey, that makes sense.
What was crazy is like when she died, for about a month after she died, I was terrified that my hair would fall flat. Because both my parents have curly hair, but like I take on a lot of my mom's features, the hair, the blue eyes. And so, and I was going to the East Coast where it was cold all the time. So I was always wearing like a hat and a scarf. And when I would take my hat off, my hair would be like kind of flat from wearing the hat. But like my brain, my like PTSD brain was like, no, you're going to lose your curls. Your hair is going to be straight for the rest of your life. Now that your mom's magical hair is dead, your magical hair is now dead. Like,
I kind of love that. It's like the life is going to drain out of your hair.
Yeah. Like I thought, I don't know. I thought I was going to lose the color from my eyes. Like it was like I would wake up every morning and like check myself and be like, oh, do I still look like her?
Wow.
It was really bizarre.
That's pretty amazing. I really love that. To me is such a perfect, almost visual metaphor for grief, where you do feel just like whatever the color just drains from you, the life from your hair, and it amazed me at any point that I could get anything done, because I was just like, why? Did you feel that? Did you feel like, what am I? People are giving me food. I know I need to eat.
Oh yeah, no, eating was really hard. I didn't eat for like a really long time.
And you're already pretty lean, so that was probably dangerous.
Yeah, it concerned a few people, but my grandma went through the same thing. She wound up in the hospital. We had to like force feed her to get her out.
That's your mom's mom?
What? Yeah, my mom's mom.
Wow.
To me, the thought of losing your kid is like, I imagine what the rest of us were going through, but like my poor grandmother, who hasn't dealt with a loss in like my grandfather died like 20 years ago.
I would say of all the the pain that we're given as human beings, the loss of a child, no matter what age, adult probably a little bit softer, but the loss of a child is that is the most horrible thing about being a human being. Whatever else is going on, great orgasms and car accidents, but that's the thing where, and I'd say maybe, I'm going to admit some craziness here, maybe that's the thing that sometimes keeps me out of a relationship. We should close these windows.
We should close
Are you
these
hearing
windows.
that? That I think that's one of the things that keeps me out of relationships is I'm always, I guess now that I'm talking about it, holy shit.
Yeah.
So your grandmother...
You never think about like building a family and then that family can just fall out from under you at any time.
Well, my family fell out from under me, the one that I was raised in, and that I might have PTSD around that too.
Yeah.
So, but your grandmother ended up in the hospital basically from grief, but like from not eating and not taking
the side
care
effects
of
of grief. Yeah.
Wow. Yes, please. Oh, we're not going to be secret anymore. There's somebody else in the room with us. Thank you.
The wonderful Al Papmani.
Yeah.
The guy that took me to the airport.
Super producer, super
best friend over here, man. All I did was call. I literally just called him. He answered right away, and he was like, "What can I do?" Mm-hmm.
I feel like because let's just have a little.
He made it to the valley in like a very short amount of time.
He's a magic man. We're going to take a little aside and talk about Al. One of the things I think why he can relate with so much is because he's been shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think once I was thinking about this, your tragedy, the pain I've been through. Al's been shot. I was like, once you've passed through that fire, it's like you're almost invincible.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck the world, fuck what anybody thinks. If you are going to be a bad person, I'm going to come out swinging. Whatever it is, it's the feeling it gives me. And I was like, oh, he survived a gunshot? Fuck, he can handle anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. Especially grieving woman going to the air. Oh.
Yeah. The airport was weird. I got on the plane and they were playing, like all the results started rolling in.
Oh, shit.
And I didn't want to watch it. I was like, I can't. I have too much anxiety. Plus, I could see it on everyone's screen. So I was like, I'm going to watch Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Who are you going to call?
And then,
there's a certain irony there.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was like, I'm going to watch the new female Ghostbusters. I'm going to have something awesome to talk to my mom about when she wakes up. And then as the movie gets like longer and more boring and worse, and like I've seen the original Ghostbusters, it's not an issue with a female cast. It's an issue with
the writing.
With the writing,
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's not a great movie. I don't know why everyone's so obsessed with it.
Because it's Lady Ghostbusters.
Well,
Come on.
no, Lady Ghostbusters is awesome. That's an awesome concept. Ghostbusters in general, like the original movie, the cast is what, the actors in both movies is what makes it great. The writing, the story structure.
That was Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd had spent years writing that thing. And he was writing to the voice. Like even, it was supposed to be John Belushi instead of Bill Murray, but still... Yeah. He was writing to the voices of the people, the new one was just like, we've got gags, and it's like, it made me gag because of that.
No, oh man, just both of them, just not good movies.
Okay, so
I'm watching this movie, and it's getting worse, yes. And then the election results are rolling in, and also getting worse, and then suddenly they're like, I'm in the air, and they're like, Trump is president. I'm like, the plane's gonna crash, right? We're gonna
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. We're not gonna land in West Virginia. I'm gonna be in heaven with my mom. Like, it all starts to hit me kind of in that moment. I was like, oh, she's not going to wake up.
You're going to be a ghost being busted by Melissa McCarthy.
Yeah.
I'm going to make this observation. So, whatever. You go to movies after whatever event, this and that. When I was in the grief, no movie was sufficiently distracting from my grief. And if it was a bad movie like this one, I was offended that they couldn't distract me from this thing that I was thinking about. Like, I was like, get the fuck out of here with your bad Hollywood bullshit.
Yeah. I was pretty mad that it couldn't pull my attention away from my neighbor's screen because I just kept watching Red State after Red State after Red State, and my stomach started to churn.
Holy shit.
And then I get to the hospital, and there's like this really polite West Virginia guy like taking me up to the room being like, don't worry, we got the best doctors, your mom's gonna be okay. And I'm like, I don't know, man, Trump just became president, I don't think this is gonna be good, I don't think this is the results I want. And I get up to her room, and they're playing the results in her ears. Like, they have like speakers next to her, like on both sides of her bed, and they're like, Donald Trump's just been elected 45th president of the United States of America. And I was like, why are you playing this in her ear? What the hell is wrong with you guys? So my brother and my dad were in the room, and they're like, oh, well, we thought if she heard, it would wake her up.
Oh, so they were being like, maybe the outrage would be like, oh, I can't have Trump as president. Like,
and would knock her out of the coma, and she'd just come back to life, like zombie mom, come to save the democracy.
I appreciate that tactic. I gotta say, that's you
gotta give him credit. But the dumbest thing I ever heard, because if I was my mom and a rapist became president, I'd run towards the light. I'd be like, well, America's over. Bye.
What's on the other side?
Glad I knew it while it was great.
Yeah, exactly. It couldn't be any whatever's over there couldn't be any worse than what's over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So so you come in, that's the first thing you see is your mother being
She had a shaved head. She basically had like my haircut, and I've shaved on both sides of the head and like a curly top. And then
so was it like she'd injured, like hit on the side?
No, it was on the back.
So like slip, fall.
Well, what they said happened was that she was going up the stairs carrying a laundry basket. At some point, she dropped the laundry basket and tried to brace her fall, and then fell backwards down the stairs and smacked her head open on the concrete.
Okay, here's a craziness. I don't know if I told you this. That's how my father died. My father got in a fight with my brother, and my father came at my brother, and my brother pushed him down, and he hit his fucking head on the concrete in front of the house. I wonder if all of this is happening because, you know what I mean? Because I was like the resonance of that. And he survived for a week. You know, how long was your mom?
They said that she had been in the coma for almost a day. Okay. Like, they called me on election day, and apparently it had happened. They
didn't want to get you. They didn't want to upset you beforehand.
Yeah, before they knew everything was like for sure. Like she wasn't coming back, and so I guess. I mean, what day did my dad say it happened? I mean, it happened like 8 hours before that, but he was saying it happened on like Veterans Day or whatever, like the government holiday is before election day. But I think he was just like Parkinson's and stuff, so he might have been kind of like out of it.
Okay.
And I was like, no, Dad, like her official, like when you airlifted her to the hospital, and they airlifted her to the wrong hospital.
Wow.
Which is why I guess how they weren't able to bring her back, because they lost a shit ton of time when you're bleeding out of your head and you airlift somebody to the wrong fucking hospital. And then, so when they finally got her to West Virginia University, it was too late.
It's interesting. Like, I have the coroner's report on my father's death, and when I looked at it and poured over it, you just see all the mistakes. And
oh man, the coroner came into the hospital room and was like, well, I didn't go to the scene, but I can assume, and that's why I say like what they said was basically this old fat white dude walks into the office, goes, well, I've never, I haven't been to the basement where she died, but what I can assume from her injuries is this. And I was like, wait, so no one was there when my mom was like, my dad was supposedly upstairs asleep. No one was there. My dad's a very light sleeper. So he didn't hear her fall. He didn't hear her for several hours. No one took pictures before moving her body. And then you just airlift her to the wrong hospital. You take her to another hospital. And then you're like, oh, cause of death is the fall. Yeah. Cause of death could have been fucking anything, anything on the way to the hospital, anything that happened at the hospital.
So this is the weird thing that I found. And like, this is going to suck to say, nobody cares as much as you and I. You know what I mean? Like the coroner, it's just a job for him. The ambulance driver, it's just a job for them. And they'll do their job, but they don't do it with I would say the diligence that a grieving child
like anyone grieving in that situation would be comfortable with. Like I just don't think it's right, like for a coroner to come in and be like, well, I haven't even examined the body. I just took a quick look at the injury on the wrist and the head and can assume she fell this way. I was so mad. Yeah. I was so fucking mad. I was like, you have no right to come in here and be like, well, this is how we think it happened when you haven't even looked.
You haven't done your due diligence.
You haven't done your your due diligence, your fucking job. And then my grandma asked for a priest, and it took like a day and a half for the priest to show up. And when he finally gets there, he's like, oh, you must be Cindy's sister. And my brother's standing right behind him being like, hey, not a good time to flirt with my grandma.
Oh, shit.
Very unprofessional hospital.
I would also say, though, that how can everybody's just living their lives, just doing their flirting or whatever it is. And then the grieving person, you or I or whoever, is just like, what is happening over here? Yeah. You guys have real life. No, look, this is stop being real people. Like it's like this. We're in our own reality tunnel where everything else is just like, what? Fuck you! Get the fuck out of here with your.
It was really tough.
Like, is an old guy hitting on your grandmother? Wow.
Yeah, like an 80-year-old priest came in and
a priest.
Yeah, wow. Like one of those non-denominational. Well, I'm sure he had a denomination because it's West Virginia. I'm sure
like Baptist or.
Well, my grandma's Methodist, so I guess that's why it took a day and a half for him to show up.
I mean, the priest hitting on a grieving mother. There is something perfectly absurdly kind of gross about that. I kind
Pastor Steve, I think was his name.
It's funny. Like these little moments, like you go into the airport. Like I'm in my head making a movie. Like what would the movie look like? And that's definitely one of the moments you would have in the movie.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the airport, the priest hitting on my grandma, my brother standing right behind him, not being super happy about it. That was perfect. My brother doesn't realize how like great his comedic timing is.
I mean, you got to get it. I mean, it sounds like was your family a pretty funny family?
Yeah, no, my dad would tell us jokes at the dinner table, but like really like esoteric jokes. Like there's 3 brigadier generals sitting on a train, and I don't even know how this joke goes. There's 3 brigadier generals sitting on a train. And they meet each other, and they're like, hello, sir, are you a brigadier general? And he's like, yes, this infantry. Hello, sir, are you a brigadier general? Yes, this infantry. And then the third one, and then like the punchline, which I've never understood. and he's like, yes, I'm a brigadier general. And I'm like, wait, is that the joke? And my dad's like, yeah, it's hilarious. Don't you think so? I'm like, what's a brigadier general?
Yeah, exactly. He's not sensitive to his audience.
Yeah.
I just also just love that the absurdity, because I think, I don't know, whatever comedy comes, that's where it's born from.
Yeah.
Is like, I want to make sense of the world for you all. Da da da. Boom.
Yeah.
You know.
My dad's definitely that guy at the open mic that's like, what, you didn't like my inappropriate sex joke? Fuck you.
Moving on.
I'm going to tell 6 more of those jokes.
You didn't like that? I'm going to walk this room. So that's the first moment you saw your mom.
Yeah.
There's a creepy priest. I mean, you know, I feel like creepy priest is definitely, you know.
He wasn't creepy. He was very wholesome, but he just... I guess he was trying to make her feel better or something. What's funny though is that it worked. She did blush, and she was like, "Oh, it's the compliment."
I will say this: as a man, and I just, this is a weird superpower that men can sometimes. I think women could do it too. But if you flirt with somebody, even if it's inappropriate, it definitely puts them in a different space. It's like they're taken aback a little bit. And if somebody is in pain or whatever, sad, whatever it is, it will make it'll, you know, because everybody likes to be flirted with.
It did give a weird shift to her demeanor. I think it was very distracting. My grandma's got a lot of game. Like, she has a boyfriend. She's she's had better relationships than I think than anyone else in our family. He like lives in Tennessee. He visits frequently.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
So
she, I think she was like thrown off, but then 2, she was like, oh, I'm taken, you know?
Yeah. So this is the hospital room. First time you're seeing your mom. Trump's on the radio, or Trump's victories
on the TV.
On the TV. Your dad, your brother, your grandma.
My mom's cousins and her brothers are also there. Yeah, everyone's there. Well, they had to show up because, like, you know, me and my brother and my dad, we don't really talk very much. Mm-hmm. And so they wanted to be there, one, you know, to see her, to say goodbye, but also to bridge the gap between all us relating to each other. Because when they my brother and my dad get together, like, my vote doesn't get counted. So it was really difficult because they immediately started, oh, this is what we're going to do for the funeral. This is what we're going to do for this. This is what we're going to do for that. And I was like, I don't agree with any of this. This isn't what she would want. Yeah. You know, she wanted to be a tree. And they're like, nah, fuck that. And I was like, no, like, one of the last conversations we had was about making sure that she becomes a tree when she dies. And we went to...
oh, wait. I've got a question on the paper.
I have an answer for you then.
Yes. What was the last conversation that you had with your mom?
Well, it was about my brother's wedding. My brother got married in Portugal to a woman that he met overseas, and
kind of that's the family tradition.
Yes. Yeah.
Go somewhere else, find a mate, bring them back.
Bring them back. Yeah. Well, he doesn't live in the States anymore. He never really liked it here. He's living overseas now. He's living in Italy, but they got married in Portugal because the wife is Lebanese, and it's it's like impossible to get a visa when you're Lebanese. Like, you can't go anywhere except Portugal, apparently. And I wasn't able to go to the wedding because I couldn't afford to, and then someone stole my passport on top of that because I was gonna surprise them. I was gonna be like, don't buy the plane ticket, and then like show up and kind of do a turnaround flight, come back. But then my passport got jacked, and I was like, well, I can't even do that. So then I'd been a total dick being like, I can't go to your wedding, and then I literally couldn't go to the wedding.
So you were talking to your mom about the wedding? She'd gone?
No, I was talking to her. This was before the wedding had happened, actually. He'd gotten married in July. And so I was on the phone with her a couple of weeks before that. And I was like, look, just remember the wedding's not about you and Dad. Because I knew the reason I was being invited was to babysit. Sure. And
were you always the diplomat in your family? Were you always the one that had to kind of like... Because for me personally, that's the role of my warring parents. I had to be the one that
I'm the messenger, right? Yeah, you're always stuck in between the two parties, and you have to like be the therapist and the legal advisor to both parties.
Yeah, exactly. To de-escalate. She's not so bad. He's not so bad. Or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. That was basically who I was to them, and with both my was like, oh, hey, watch mom, make sure she doesn't drink. And then the opposite wound up happening where my mom had to watch me because I drank too much.
Nice.
So, I was on the phone with her, and I was like telling her about this girl that I liked that had kind of like blown me off. And my mom was like, that's not the girl for you. And I was hungover with a migraine. So I was like throwing up outside my door because I like had like this like back exit, and I didn't want to throw up into my trash can.
Sure. Because you don't want the you're
hungover and effort and stuff. So I'm just like throwing up outside my door, talking to my mom like, oh, I have this awful headache. This girl just, like totally blew me off last night. Love is bunk. all this stuff. Hey, you know what's weird? I read this article about when you die, you can become a tree.
What?
And my mom goes, oh, that's nice. I'd like to be a tree when I die.
What?
And I was like, all right, cool. We'll make sure that happens. And then we started talking about like, Trump's about to be president and how scared she is. And I was like, don't worry. Like this whole state is going blue. So many states have become swing states. Like as long as Clinton can get that Rust Belt, we are good.
It's not to diminish any of this stuff. It's been terrible. Year and quarter year and almost a year and a half of Trump, but it's not as terrible as I thought it was going to be. I mean, there are prison camps, yes, but they aren't fully functional yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like when white dudes are like, well, it's not as bad as it could be. Kind of doesn't count because it's like there's so many things that have been taken away from things that don't affect you.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I would also say, though, that let's say under Obama, the white reaction to having a black president, in the red states was so crazy, that's where there was such a spike in cop on black crime and all that. It's tough. It's hard to judge any of it because ultimately the presidency you would hope is not as powerful as it is. I don't know. It's like what I mean by that is I was truly expecting the very next day for us to start going to war all around the world or that we'd be invaded by China. Like I was expecting Putin to just fly over and be like, it's my White House now. You know what I mean? Like I was really like, my fears were, I guess, catastrophic. And yes, it's when I say it's not that bad, but that's the creeping evil. That's the creeping little.
Well, I mean, I think, I don't know. I've always been familiar to how slow government functions. So when something like this happens, it's like, okay, the bad stuff's not going to hit for about a year or two until Congress can get some stuff passed. So like now is where things are going to start getting kind of like Handmaid's Tale-y and like Big Brother-y and all essential doomsday because they've had time to work behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But more stuff is getting revealed in order. I think the only benefit to Trump being president is now people can see the corruption for what it is instead of the ideal for what it could be.
Yeah, it's so blatant. It's so transparent. And again, like I'm hoping that it activates the younger generation because I actually
they're going to save the world. They're going to fix everything.
Just hopefully they won't be manipulated the way other generations have been. Because I think that one of the reasons why my Generation X is in this corruptible state right now is because they were given a message for 25, 30 years of a certain kind of entitlement, that they own the world, whatever. I'm just hoping, fingers crossed, that yes, the youth can actually be like, no, that's not the kind of country we want to live in. This is the direction. Greener, more progressive gender and sexuality politics. Everybody should go to a fetish club. I don't know why. That's just my own personal agenda. So your mom wanted to be a tree.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm at an acting class. You can be buried in a tree, becoming a tree.
Sure.
I don't know. And then like after that, the last time I had talked to her was the day of the wedding. We'd actually had a fight because I was trying to. I told them, I was like, look, I really want to go. I can't go overseas. And they were like, well, the real wedding is like that's just like the ceremony for Karin's family. And I was like, well, where's the real wedding? They're like, we're probably going to have it in like DC or New York. It's just going to be like a couple of us. And, we're just going to do all the legal paperwork. And I was like, oh, well, let me know. I want to be there. I can take a train. I can take a plane. Like I can get there.
In a cost-effective way.
In a cost-effective way in a couple of days. So it's much better for like me not fucking up my sleep schedule to come back to LA right away.
Yeah.
And so I messaged them one day and they messaged me and the wife messages me back being like, oh, it's done.
We're
like we've already done it. It's out of the way now. Like you've missed your opportunity to watch us get married.
And you have betrayed us.
Yeah. And then the night of the wedding, I stayed up all night and I was like, hey, like let me know when it is so like we can live stream it. And they're like, oh, no cell phones allowed in the church. And I was like, are you kidding? And they're like, no. So I called every member of my family. And the last person,
they call it the Izzy rule. We
don't. We just don't want you at the wedding. And then the last person I called was my mom, and I was like, hey, come on, like at least let me talk to them like before the wedding, so I can, send them my best wishes or whatever. And my mom was like, well, they're really busy, and I don't know how this computer works or whatever. And I was just like, I'm so sick of you guys, being like, oh, we love you, you're included, but you're not included, so goodbye.
Well, they want to put on I feel like this is definitely family. They want to put on the good face of being like, oh, we did everything that we could.
Yeah.
But without
they were literally, they were
everything.
actually doing like the bare minimum.
Oh, sure.
And I just got really frustrated because that's kind of the way it's always been, where I feel like my brother got really jealous when I showed up in the family.
Sure.
And then was like, I kind of want a family without you.
Sure. I also think that those are the seeds that made you a performer. I'm here now.
Yes,
pay attention.
Pay attention to me, God damn it. I want to talk at the dinner table.
Yes.
And now I have a microphone so I can.
You have to listen to me. You can't go. The audience, you can't leave. That's I think I didn't discover I was a performer actually until after my father's death, which, not that I had a great childhood, I just didn't have that need. And I think that need is, I always say you need the attention of more than just a lover or your family. Mm-hmm. You need the attention of a whole audience.
Yeah, a whole group of strangers to tell your deep, dark secrets too.
Yeah. But that's, again, but I also think that that's the mystical superpower of a performer, is that we can be that for the audience. There's almost, yes, you want to make people laugh, but you could be, there's a catharsis. There's a way in which, like, laugh at my pain, I'm a clown, Yeah. I've got a painted on smile, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Comics are definitely the fools of the modern era.
Yeah.
Because they've seen both the comedy and the tragedy in life, and they find a way to tell people about it in a way that's palatable.
Yeah. I don't trust, I trust you because I know you have real pain, but in general, I don't trust young people as comedians, because
I don't trust a comic that's not comfortable crying.
Sure.
You know what I mean? God. Like if you can't hit every range of your emotions, then I think there's something cynical to your sense of humor.
Sure.
And it worries me.
It's a little sociopathic too.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I want to do this, but I want to figure out a way to do crying clubs instead of comedy clubs, like a place where people could actually, but that's the Moth, I guess, maybe. I don't know. But
Moth isn't always sad.
Not always, but I'm saying, like, is there a place where you could have both? Because to me, the best reaction in the world is laughing until you cry, like laughing so hard tears are coming out, or crying until you laugh. Right?
Yeah.
Like crying, and then at a certain point, like, why am I crying so hard? And you start laughing at yourself. It's almost like a hysteria. Yes, that's a fantasy. I know it's hard to actually create that in people, but people climb Mount Everest because they want to get to the top. That's the emotions I want to evoke out of people.
You should just drop it on people's group therapies or Alcoholics Anonymous meetings.
Or
I feel like that's a great place to find people crying in groups.
Or have a grief-based podcast.
Or just go to people's funerals. Just show up at people's funerals.
I used to fantasize about that when I was younger, because I
think about it now all the time.
Well, if you ever want to,
just
we
can
go
crash funerals. We could do like funeral crashers, like wedding crashers. We'll come up with a list of rules and we'll try and fuck people at the funerals. I love this idea.
Grief is the best lubricant. I can't believe I just said that. So wrong. So fucking wrong. But that was Will Ferrell's character at the end of that, right?
Wasn't it?
Yeah. He was like, I've got a new thing.
I haven't seen that movie in so long.
Why I want to do this is because I think Americans for sure have a big problem with sadness and grief, and
definitely.
And I think that I would say even my generation, like the Generation X and the baby boomers, they're modeling in their own way, but they're kind of sociopaths, just because they had everything given to them. And so I think that there's going to be a giant wave of shittiness. Everybody's going to be dying in the next 10, 15 years, that huge generation. And I think there's there's something exciting about it to me.
Yeah. I think, well, because we view family in this traditional construct where like when your parent dies, you're supposed to be a certain type of sad. And I think when my mom died, there was also like this guilt attached to it because we didn't have a good relationship.
Yeah.
Like I was sick most of my childhood, and that affected her, and so she resented me for that. And so that's why we always kind of had this, like I said, like our last conversation was an argument on the internet because I felt resentful towards them for like kind of isolating me from the family because they didn't want to deal with my sickness and help me bring me back to like a place where I could be well and be well around them.
Sure. And I also think, is it a specific sickness that you had?
Well, it's the migraines. So I, basically what happened was one day I got a headache and I went to my mom, I was like, I have a headache. And then they just sent me to a bunch of doctors who then misdiagnosed me, put me on a whole bunch of different medications. I was cycled through medications. I was hospitalized twice to try and get rid of them because I couldn't go to school. And I couldn't go to college. I dropped out of college several times
because I'm going to speculate, and this is, I have no basis. Do you think that there is an anxiety that contributes to?
Definitely. Okay. Well, because it's like when it first started happening, like it was so shocking, and I don't think that like they never dealt with like the fear of it properly, and so then it becomes this own vicious cycle. It feeds it.
Yeah.
And now I'm like in all kinds of therapy and and stuff like that to try and separate the emotional part of it from the physical part of it.
Yeah. Because I think this is going to sound. I mean, our minds are very powerful, and we as artists are extremely sensitive. Your father's a photographer. My father's a photographer too. We have these weird parallels. Gemini, photographer, father, grief. The head injury, whatever. I don't know where I'm going. But I was always such a sensitive child, and at a certain point, I get the tattoos and the put on the Falabrium hat just because I got to go out in the world and act tough. I got to act like a man, and that totally pushed down. I'll just say the sensitive child that was in me that I killed when I was 4 or 5 years old because I had to be the man in the family. And I think whatever the tensions, the sensitivities that you had as a child and not being able to express it, somehow, yes, I'm sure there's something biological, but I'm sure that there's also the placebo effect of like anxiety and fear, and then headache. Okay, I can check out, or I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm just speculating. I'm not trying to diagnose.
I definitely think that there's something there. There's obviously a physical element to it too that they're trying to pinpoint.
An allergy of some sort that then it triggers, but then
they found recently it's like a nerve that gets inflamed. So they always thought that it was like food based or like allergy based or something like that. But they're looking more at the symptoms and the cause. And what happens is like you have like a nerve like in your somewhere in like your neck or shoulder area that gets inflamed. So if you run into certain things, those things will trigger that thing to go off.
Yeah, because that's where you carry your stress or whatever.
Yeah.
So I had when I was in college, I was editing my first movie, and I was at a flatbed, a Steenbeck, and I got the worst neck pain that I ever had in my life. I think, yes, there was a bad position, not sleeping. Like I was abusing myself, but I also think it was my subconscious was fucking stopping me from trying to get close to my dreams. That my low self-esteem or whatever was like, oh, you thought you were going to make this movie? Get the fuck out of here, you know? Like, and it's tough because I think that, I think that our emotions and the spiritual aspect of who we are amplifies, there definitely is a delicate interplay. And if you're a sensitive person and you have this physical thing that then then it just becomes like a volcano.
Oh, definitely. My mom and I went to so many doctors. Like we saw the most kind of ridiculous specialists you would ever believe. Like we saw all the common things, allergists, eye doctors, to check off all the boxes. And then when things started to get really absurd and I was having several headaches a day, I couldn't go to school. We started seeing a dude that specifically massages feet. We saw an acupuncturist that had specialty in the spiritual realm, and they'd always be like, oh, you have emotional blockage. And I'm like, great, get me out of this fucking house. These people are nuts.
Yeah. No, seriously. You were in a toxic environment.
Yeah.
I mean, emotionally toxic.
Yeah.
And probably being in Virginia. I'm just saying. But it's. I think that this is something our generation, I'll just say, is going to be very sensitive to, is that children are these sponges, these infinite sponges. But if you suck up filthy water, you're just going to squeeze out filthy water, you know? And so I think if the reason why there's so much, let's say, problems in minority communities is because they're in this shitty pool. And so that you don't have the opportunity to maybe not be around people that are angry or disenfranchised, you know? So, you know, it becomes a generational, like, you know, fuck this world, fuck, you know, I don't know where I'm going now. I'm getting a little crazy going.
A generational gap between, definitely. My grandmother doesn't really know how to express emotions. And I found that very obvious in the hospital room because she was crying a lot, but the only person that could really like get close to her and console her were me and my cousin. And this is my mom's older cousin. So she's like a something once removed to me, but I don't know. She's just
somebody
my cousin.
that grew up with your grandma.
Yeah. And the only person she really wanted to talk to was the priest. Yeah. Why it's so hilarious that the first thing he does is come in and hit on her, because it's like, you're supposed to be her emotional rock right now. I mean, and you're trying to get laid, you freaking pastor. I would also say that
that's like that Stockholm syndrome, right? Yeah. I feel like so many people go back to their abusers because it's what they know. Like, and I'm not saying like he was her abuser, but I'm just saying like it's. It's like, oh, this is the pain I know, rather than this pain I'm actually have to deal with. Does that make any sense?
Well, I mean, not in her case, because she's had really good experiences with the church.
Oh, okay. I always feel like the church is just this.
Yeah, I think it's the Methodist church. It's not the Catholic church.
Okay, that's true.
So she wanted to confide in him, and like she was trying to figure out how to deal with someone who was fucking 5 feet away from her with my dad. Like, a lot of us kind of put the blame on him because he was the one that bought the house despite her not wanting. She was like, I don't like that house. And he's like, no, it's going to be great. He was the one that was like, let's not get divorced and move back in together. And it's going to be great. And then they still had to deal with their shitty marriage.
So let's get back to the tree real quick.
Oh, the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was like, a small argument in the hospital over how we would bury her. And my brother was like, screw it. We're going to cremate her and we're going to split the ashes and you do whatever the fuck you want. And I was like, all right, great. I'm making her a tree. So 6 months, because she died in November and you can't plant a tree in November. And, the cremation takes a while and stuff. 6 months after that, on April 1st, on April Fool's Day.
Which was my sobriety date.
Oh, yeah?
No, not anymore.
It's funny. I got arrested on April 1st back in 2010. So it was weird to have that kind of landmark of being like, 8 years later, this is, not where I expected to be. I went to Philadelphia, which is where my mom's family lives. It was one of the first places I ever went on vacation to, and we planted her as a cherry blossom, and
which is very of that area,
Yeah, it's they're typically planted like in DC. I guess you can find some of them in Philadelphia, but it's definitely like, I mean, it's originally from Japan, but they thrive in the East Coast. They can survive there. They can do well there. And she used to take us to the Cherry Blossom Festival every year in DC. Like, she loved that festival despite the barrage of tourists that are in DC and the impossibility of parking and the humidity. Like, she loved going to this thing. And so I was like, well, I want to plant her as a tree. And I couldn't figure out what color to make the tree. I was like, should it be a pink tree or a white tree? Because she loved white Christmas trees, but, she was like a spark of color in the world. And I kept going back and forth on the color because my cousin was like, well, what color do you want the tree to be? Because we decided, because we looked into the burial plots and it was like fucking $5,000. And it's like, that's as much as a casket. Like, that's ridiculous. So what we decided to do was, since we'd cremated the ashes, I took my half of the ashes and we got a baby tree. Because if you plant like a seed in the ground, there's no guarantee it'll become a tree. Yep. There's so many factors that go into a tree, like a seed making it into a tree.
That's why there's so many of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So we took like a sapling?
Sapling, yeah.
And I dug a small hole, put the sapling in the ground, buried the ashes on top. And just as I was covering up the dirt, a little boy runs over and like jumps onto the thing, and he's not wearing a shirt, and he's having like the best time of his life, and he's like, "What's this thing?" And I was like, "Oh, this is my mom. Say hi to my mom."
Wow.
And I'm like crying, but like it's just so beautiful because like literally the second I put her into the ground, she found someone to connect with. And like I knew right away, like, because I came back the next day to check on it, and I found a couple feet away, I found a gray jacket that had weed in it.
Nice. The universe is gifting you with drugs.
Yeah.
That's the best.
It's the best. And then the little boy was playing with the tree. So I was like, okay, great. She's made a friend. She's happy here. It's in this place called Liberty Lands, which is like a little park in Philadelphia that's historically landmarked. So it can't be turned into a Starbucks or a Petco or like
Did you have to
whatever.
get clearance, or did you just
No,
do it?
my cousin is like part of like the committee.
Okay.
So she gets to decide what's get planted there and
Okay.
like what festivals go there and all that stuff. And it's a playground for kids and a dog park. So it's all these things that my mom likes. And then there's also a bakery next door that plays jams like in the middle of the night, 'cause they start baking at like 2-3 in the morning. And I was in Philadelphia doing comedy shows. So I was like, well, because when she died, I didn't know what to do, so I immediately just started looking for a place to go do comedy. And I was in West Virginia, so the closest place was Pittsburgh. So I went to Pittsburgh and did 5 minutes. I was supposed to do 2 sets, but I don't think the headliner liked me. So he was like, do 1 set and leave, which worked out for me because like a girl from my friend hit me up and was like, oh, you're in Pittsburgh? My sister lives there. You should hit her up. And we were both gay in high school, but we weren't out. And then when I like went to her place, we wound up like making out, and she's like, "You can sleep on my couch." And I was like, "Oh, this is perfect," because I was still stuck in like this grief cycle where I was like, the only thing I'd planned to do was go see my mom and do comedy. We had just pulled the plug, and I was like, "Okay, now I'm going to go to Pittsburgh," and I hadn't figured out where I was going to stay, how I was going to get there, any of that stuff. I just hopped on a bus, and when I showed up in Pittsburgh, she was like, "Yeah, crash with me," and that worked out.
And making out with a hot girl, that never hurts.
Never hurts.
So, how did you feel when you made the decision to pull the
I didn't make the decision. They made the decision.
The hospital.
I had shown up to the hospital, and they were like, "It's going to be done. We have to harvest her organs."
So that was your dad and your brother?
Yeah, and they had basically decided that. And so, like, it happened on November 8th. It happened earlier. I guess her official time of death, I guess they said, was like 3 a.m. or something like that, or 8 a.m.
When her body finally goes up.
And it frustrated me because I felt like I hadn't been included in the decision.
Sure.
And they were like, look, there's no signs of life. There's no guarantee that she's going to come back. But like, and they say that this is common with cadavers or people in comas or whatever. Not cadavers, because I guess you have to like be fully legally dead. But people in comas, like, they have like this automatic response. Like if you touch them, their body will react, but they're not there.
Yeah.
And that was really hard for us to explain to my uncle, who's the youngest brother, and my cousin, who wasn't in the room. She was like, his daughter was still at home, and so like I had to call her and tell her like, hey, we're pulling the plug. We can't pull the plug until they harvest her organs, so we have to stick around for a couple of days. And so we would have to keep coming back to the hospital just to spend time with her. It took them about 3 days to find matches, because when you die, you can save up to 8 lives. Because you have 8 like major organs that they can take from you, and we were like, take everything.
Yeah. It's
take
probably
anything.
what you would have wanted.
Yeah, take anything that you can use. And they were like, well, we're gonna take her liver, her kidney, and her lungs. And I was like, why would you want any of those? She drank and smoked 2 packs a day.
Here's why. She put those to the test.
Yeah. Well, because apparently when you die, your body starts to like clean all the organs out, and they have ways of sanitizing them. And I guess that they were just barely usable or something.
But again, like if somebody is again like. It's just like putting a retread on your, you got a flat tire, but if you put a retread, you'll get a few more miles out of it,
Yeah.
Whew.
They only needed a piece of the liver. I guess they cut around the cirrhotic part. I don't know what they did, but they worked some magic. Yeah.
So
she saved 3 lives. I'm happy that she got to do that.
So are they performing the surgery on her while she's still alive, or do they pull the plug?
I think what they do, I don't know, because my brother for some reason, he was just very upset that I seemed to be there. And because I was trying to like get in the bed and like hold her like, you know, before I could say goodbye. My brother's like, what are you doing? Because I was like, you know, stepping on like wires and all kinds of things trying to get there. And I'm like, I don't like, let me touch her, you know, more than her hand, because her hand is like inflamed from bracing her fall. And, you know, I want to hold her one last time. Like, my dad was just kind of like sitting in the corner because he felt awful and guilty because he, you know, hadn't gotten there in time. And my brother was obviously, he was a whole state away. But he was like, what are you doing? Get out of the bed. And then so when they're like, all right, we're going to pull the plug, I just kissed her on the cheek and I left the room to go tell my cousin and my grandma they're pulling the plug. She is going to be dead within 45 minutes or however long it takes. And, you know, it sucked because it was like, I would have liked, I knew it was what she wanted. I remember when I was 8 and we were driving around listening to, the Terry Schiavo case.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, never let me wind up like that. I do not want to be a vegetable. I want you to pull the plug.
I tell my friends, if I'm ever wearing a diaper and it's not a bit, kill me. Kill me. You know, I just, you know, I absolutely, it's a tough, I don't think it's a tough decision to make in the moment, meaning like, she's saying to you as your 8-year-old you, don't let this happen to me.
Yeah.
I don't even want to say it was a bit, but it's a thing where you really feel that in the moment. But then when it actually...
Well, like when I was 8, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, that's never going to happen. Ooh. You know, you're going to die of lung cancer.
Isn't that crazy?
I'm going to have chances to be like, hey, I told you so. You shouldn't have smoked that cigarette. Oh. Like I thought I was on such like a moral high ground with this woman. And then for her to go like this, where like I didn't get to say goodbye, I didn't get to say I was sorry. And actually I tried, after our last conversation, I tried calling my parents and my dad picked up and I was like, can I talk to mom? And my dad was like, no, I don't want to wake her up. I'm afraid if I wake her up, she'll be mad at me for days. And I was like, stop being a pussy and go wake her up so that I can say that I love her. And because I just met Charlie Sheen and I was trying to tell my mom that I'd met Charlie Sheen.
Very important. Very important.
And he was like, no, it's gonna make her mad. By the way, did you fuck Charlie Sheen? And I was like, no, Dad, I didn't fuck Charlie Sheen.
I did give him a back rub, though. I did.
He did try to kiss me, but I dodged it. And
did he really?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I was his waiter at Yamashiro, and he gave me a ride home, and I shook his hand, like, because he tried to, like,
you basically got in the Bears car.
It was so funny because he was like, it's so weird that you play for the other team. I was like, I know, women are terrible. And then he like leans in to kiss me and I was like, have a great night, Mr. Sheen, because the whole night I've been calling him Mr. Sheen. He was like, don't call me that, call me Charlie, that my dad's Mr. Sheen. So I was trying to remind him of our age gap. He kept being like, oh, you remind me of my daughter, you could be my daughter. And I was like, why are you trying to make out with me right now?
It's hot. No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking.
So I was like trying to call my mom and like tell her this crazy story, and my dad's like, no, I don't want to wake her up. So there's like that layer of resentment too. And I went downstairs to be like, hey, you know, the plug is pulled. And when I turn around, my brother, who had been upstairs last I checked, was right behind me and tried to hug me. And I kind of pushed him away. And then we left the hospital. I sat in my hotel room. I was like, I don't know what to do. I just started, and earlier that day is when they told me, hey, you're going to get up at the Pittsburgh Improv. And I thought I was going to an open mic. So I wrote a couple of jokes down. The next day I bus into Pittsburgh from West Virginia, and I wind up getting up in front of 250 people, and I tell a couple of jokes about my mom dying. I rework my other material about being gay and work her into that. And then I did that all over DC. I kept going, farther with that, my mom dying material. It was weird to see because, we're in Pittsburgh, so the split when I was like, I think this is the apocalypse, some of the audience was, really down for it, and the rest of them were like, no, we love Trump, we voted for that guy. And then
this little dyke is telling us that our God King is bad for us.
Yeah. They were so, dude, some of those people were like, oh, we're not on board for this. We voted for this guy. And then the funeral was that Tuesday. They held the funeral really fast. Yeah. Which again, I wasn't included. Nobody told me I was leaving West Virginia, and I told him, I was like, look, I have shows in LA. I have to fly home. So just let me know when the funeral is. And they were like, okay, it's on Tuesday. Right as I had booked my flight home, I was like, well, you could have told me and I would have rescheduled the shows and I would have gone to the funeral first. But anyways, I flew to LA. I did a couple of shows. I flew to DC. I got there the morning of the funeral and then told all these jokes that I'd been working out, through 2 states over the course of maybe not even 5 days at my mom's funeral.
Nice.
Of, her dying on election day and about her being an alcoholic, and the room loved it. They loved it. Everybody except my Trump supporting uncle loved it.
Well, I know, but that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's, I would
so,
say, like,
so I was like, great. But he didn't come up to me and be like, I didn't like your speech. All my mom's friends, like, old childhood friends' parents were there. It was this weird, like, full circle closure thing that happened because there's so many people from the past that I didn't expect to see at this funeral. Like
of course, right?
Yeah, like my childhood best friend's parents came, and like, like the family that lived up the street, their mom came, and they were all like, we loved your speech. Like my mom's drinking buddies showed up. I was like, these are the last people I would expect to be at my mom's funeral. Like some of my mom's lifelong friends didn't come to this funeral, but her drinking buddies came. And my uncle went up to my dad and goes, I didn't like your daughter's speech. And my dad goes, all right, whatever, and walked away. It was the end of the conversation. I was like, oh, he could have come, said that to my face. I would have told him to get the fuck out of this fucking funeral, you fucking Trump supporting piece of shit. And I almost went on like a political rant, but I stopped myself because I was like, not the time and place for that. But
it was the time and place for him to be an asshole.
Clearly. I mean, that's just what my family does. I felt really bad for my brother because he took it upon himself to do all the paperwork and like the getting things in order thing, like setting up the funeral.
We're artists. We're not built for that. I'm just saying.
Well, I would have offered to have done it.
I know.
But he was just like, it's my responsibility. I decided. And so he set up the funeral at my grandma's old church, and we had the service there. We had the fucking most hack ass priest come do the service who did the most generic love is patient, love is blind. And my mom's family starts cracking up because he's all, love is patient, love is blind. And my mom's family is on the other side of the church just laughing so hard because they're like, have you met Cindy? Do you know she's not a patient person? Like,
so corny.
It was so corny. And then I got up there and I was like, well, give it up for this hacky priest, and also all these jokes about my mom being dead. And then I cried in front of a couple hundred people, not even 100 people, probably about 50 people.
Yeah, but was that like the first time I'm just saying.
It was the first time it hit me, a lot of loud neighbors.
I'm just gonna say this. This is just because. Could you hear it, Al? No. Oh, okay, never mind.
Cut that part out. And it was the first time it hit me where like she's not gonna. Or it was probably like the second or third time where she's not gonna come back, and there was no way to make it better, and I was just gonna have to sit with this pain for a while. My cousin took me outside and was like, hey, her dad died, so she kind of like abruptly, so she kind of knew how shocking it was, because most people like lose their parents and like, oh, you have time to say goodbye. I always thought like my mom was gonna die of cancer and I'd have opportunity to rub it in her face.
Yeah, exactly. The emphysema is going to slowly extinguish
slowly take you, and I get to sit there through all of it.
Yeah.
And Schadenfreude, that whole thing, but this was much different. And and my brother, through this whole process, him and I maybe exchanged a couple of sentences, and I've barely looked my dad in the eye because I'm still mad at him. And I have all my mom's friends, people I've never met, coming up and being like, oh, you look just like her. And this is like the first time in my life where I heard it my whole childhood. I'm like, oh, don't compare me to her. I don't want to be like her. And everyone's like, oh, you look just like her. And now I'm like clinging on to this thing. But it was so weird because every day I would wake up and I could hear her voice. Like a couple days after her funeral, I would wake up and I heard her singing happy birthday to me, which was bizarre because it was like November, and I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, but I want to say this. I need to sing it to you one last time before I go. So it was weird, and then having to kind of drudge all that stuff up 6 months down the road to put her in the ground was really hard. because I just, like you think grief is one of those weird things that like you think you're over it, and then you get triggered by something and it just pops up.
It's like a sore muscle.
Yeah,
it's like like you've been doing this thing and then you stop doing it and then you're like, oh, that's right, I have this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a pinched nerve, or like you aggravate it and it's gonna bother you for a couple of days.
And you think it's gone.
Yeah, and you think it's gone, and then it just comes rushing right back. Because for weeks after she died, I would wake up crying, and I couldn't get through my day without crying, and I would be like at a coffee shop and just start crying, and so that after the funeral, like the official funeral, like I was like, oh, great, it's over, and it didn't stop. And then when I buried her, like it kind of came back.
Sure. Like an old wound.
Yeah. But I was in Philadelphia doing comedy shows, so I planted my mom.
I gotta say, that's the perfect kind of melancholy that one should go on stage with.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a little sad, but I'm gonna try to make you laugh.
Yeah, but I have a good excuse for it. It fit into my act pretty well, actually. Honestly,
it's so fortunate. It's so fortunate your mom went the way she did.
If she hadn't died, I kind of wonder what I'd be doing for material right now, because I did feel like I was at this block where I didn't like my old stuff. Like I was talking a lot about like
it's the greatest gift she could ever give you.
It was the greatest gift.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But she was late to everything, but she was right on time for the apocalypse. I mean, she has amazing timing. That's the best comedic timing. That one
full circle.
Also, though, she didn't go right. She didn't nail the exit. She had to linger a little bit, so she's like, she didn't know when to get off stage. You know what I mean? It's like, no.
No, that's like perfectly my mom. The last time I saw my mom physically was at my cousin's wedding in 2014. We were down in San Diego. And I was getting back on the train to go to LA, and my mom was like, oh, let me help you with your bag. And then she gets on the train and follows me to my seat and sits down on the train, and then the train takes off. And my dad's sitting outside the train station in his car being like, where the fuck is Cindy? And we're on the train like, oh shit, Dad's gonna be so mad. And so we just chill till Oceanside because the train's not gonna stop.
Yeah, exactly.
And we cuddled, and then my mom calls my dad, and she's like, well, he's super pissed. And I was like, yeah, of course he is. Tell him to meet us in Oceanside. And, then we say goodbye in Oceanside.
That's actually perfect. I mean, I feel like...
Because, that's just such a mom thing to do, for her to, like, be like, oh, by the way, I totally fucked up saying goodbye to our kid, and now I'm in a different city.
There's also... I'd also say there's a little bit of that... her trickster energy there.
Yeah.
Where, was it an accident? I don't know. But it worked out in that, you didn't know that was going to be the last time you saw her.
Yeah.
And Oceanside's kind of a great, dumb... beautiful place to say goodbye in a weird way. I mean, I know you didn't know you were saying goodbye.
No, it is kind of perfect. I've had a lot of childhood moments in that San Diego Oceanside area.
Yeah.
And so now every time I drive down there, I can think about her and kind of feel her presence. I was actually down in San Diego recently because my mom used to take us to the beach all the time as kids.
So where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Northern Virginia, but we spent our summers in San Diego.
Oh, okay.
My family lives in the Hillcrest area, and
so
we go to the beach all the time.
All the time.
Every summer we were in North Carolina, Virginia Beach, in Ocean City, Maryland, or in San Diego. And when I was down recently in San Diego doing a comedy show, I was at the beach, and randomly I was like in the water and it was cold. I was like, I'm going to go take a nap on the beach. And then I just had this instinct, and I again thought I heard my mom's voice being like, Isabel, look up. So I looked up, and there were dolphins doing flips and all kinds of cool shit in the water. And I was like, oh, fuck yeah. And I just grabbed my surfboard and I went back out into the water, and I was like 10 feet away from real life dolphins. I could like almost touch them. I wanted to, but I was like, oh, wild animal, don't pet it. But it was just like this weird, bizarre moment where, because and the farther you get away from a tragedy like that, the more you kind of are able to get back to your equilibrium in your real life. And like, sometimes when I lose things, I'll hear my mom's voice being like, you put things back where you are supposed to keep them and stuff like that. But like, I hadn't heard her voice in a while. And so it was this nice, cool kind of spiritual moment. Cause like my mom and I love dolphins.
Sure. But I'd also say like, whatever magical thinking. That was your mother saying goodbye on some level, you know?
Yeah. Or, or hello, hey, I'm still around. Like I'm still a few feet away from you.
I'm going to go to the next level. She was those dolphins. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I think that a lot of the, whatever, the mystical transcendent nature and how kind of memory and all that works.
There was a lot of it, from the second that she died. It was weird. It was like she was because that morning when I was going to the voting booth, I had this dream where she was trying to say goodbye, and I was like, "What are you doing here? I'm still upset with you. I kind of don't want to talk to you." And she was like hugging me, and I was like, "Okay, well, I'll take a hug," And she's like, "I just want to say goodbye." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" It was so weird because she looked younger than I remembered her, and I was like, "Oh, you look so young, you look so beautiful." And she's like, "Yeah, well, everyone's 39 in heaven." And I was like, "What? Heaven? What?" Oh. And
that's actually, I'm gonna say this real quick.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna put a title on this episode, everyone's 39 in heaven.
Yeah.
That to me that's such a hilarious idea, because I've never heard that's such a weird specific number.
Yeah, it's good news.
It's before you're 40. Nobody wants to be 40.
Everybody freaks out about turning 40. Yeah. So I feel like 39 is the perfect number. And it was weird because it happened usually you're in a dream and you're in some place that you recognize, but we were in just like this dark abyss and there was a light behind her. And then I woke up and I was like, oh, that's a very bizarre dream to have. I guess I'll try and call mom again today. And then I went out on my patio and I got stoned and I went to go vote, and I was avoiding my brother and my dad's phone calls. And, and then I got the voicemail and it spiraled from there. But her, going to my friend Mike's house was like kind of made me feel like, okay, something here is normal because I'm still with family friends. Mm-hmm. And then I started getting all these phone calls from like my cousins and people being like, hey, are you on your way? Like, hey, we're so sorry for your loss. And I was like, oh, what do you, like, it didn't feel real yet. Yeah. And Al knows because I'm sitting in my car being like, fuck these people. How dare they call me? And then afterwards I was like, oh, it was really nice of them to do that. But then like in the moment I was just like, I haven't seen the reality of it yet. And I had to fly from LA to Boston and Boston to Pittsburgh and then take a bus, or what I thought I was going to do was take a train from Pittsburgh to West Virginia, because there's no Virginia. I guess it does have an airport, but I guess it's not one that you can fly into or something like that.
Or it's so small that
that there was no flight flights going there. Yeah. And my mom always had this wonderful way of just making friends with strangers. Like even the most inappropriate people, like you're standing in line at the grocery store and suddenly she's having a 20-minute conversation with this person over like childhood memories or whatever, she's able to pull the personal things out of people very quickly. And I'm standing in line at this Dunkin' Donuts in Boston, just kind of chatting it up with these women because the line is taking forever. And I'm trying not to think about these two awful realities in front of me. Like my brain keeps going back and forth between my mom being dead and Trump becoming president. And I'm just, talking it up with these ladies, or with this one lady in particular. And she's like, yeah, my partner and I are going to West Virginia. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. That's where I'm going. And she was like, oh, wow, how do you plan on getting there? And I was like, oh, I'm going to take a train. And she goes, And then they sit like several rows behind me. And then, I'm watching Ghostbusters. The election results happen. We get off the plane. And I'm like, oh, man, how do I get to the train station? I'm in the airport being like, oh, fuck, there's no train station. This isn't New York. This isn't L.A. I have no idea how to find a bus to West Virginia. And these two lesbians walk up to me, the women I'd been talking to at Dunkin' Donuts. And they're like, oh, hey, we're going, this way. Do you want to ride? Where are you going? And I was like, oh, I'm going to West Virginia University, Morgantown. And they're like, oh, we're going a mile away from there. Coincidentally, they were going a mile away from where my mom was laying in a hospital, and they gave me a ride there.
I think, not to get too mystical, but I think the universe provides us with, brings us to ourselves. And that's like one of those moments where you were, lesbian couple. Come on. Mm-hmm. It's just this, it's almost like the idea that where you see, like you, everybody else is you in the universe. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they were kind of future you or past you or whatever, providing you with this opportunity. I think that's a good place for us. Unless you feel like you have anything that you want to add, do you feel like there's one?
I don't know. there any other anecdotes?
So I want to let me ask you this question, because I feel like thinking about grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Mm-hmm. Did you ever have a real moment of acceptance where you're like, oh, she's gone and it's okay?
Yeah, I was sitting in the hospital bed and I was saying goodbye to her, and I felt this wave of like relief that my life was now my life to live, and that the life she'd given me was like a gift and stuff. And like even though I couldn't bring her back, I could still take the best pieces of her and do good with them throughout the world, which is another reason I was like, well, I have to make her a tree because that's what she wants, and that's the way. Because when you cremate a body, it's actually really bad for the environment. So planting a tree kind of offsets that carbon footprint.
Always thinking about the planet, you.
Well, she loved to garden. She was a gardener. She had a green thumb. She spent most of her time in the garden, like drinking and smoking, but gardening.
Sure.
So that's like a place where I know that she would feel at home. And I was actually, after I'd planted the tree, I was in Philadelphia. I was doing comedy shows. I went out to like bumfuck nowhere, Swarthmore, came back drunk at 2 a.m, and I was wandering around Philadelphia trying to find a candle to light, or a lighter to light a candle we had left that we couldn't get lit because it had been too windy. And I had found a woman who had been at my comedy show a couple days earlier who got drunk and was heckling, so we kicked her out. But before we kicked her out, she was like, oh, you're adorable. I'm like, get out, you're heckling. And then I found her on the street and was like, hey, can I borrow your lighter? And she goes, oh, you're so adorable. You look so familiar. And I was like, yeah, can I have your lighter? And she was like, oh, yeah, here. And she lit her cigarette and tossed me the lighter and walked away.
Wow.
And I went and I lit the candle, and then I could hear the music coming from the bakery. And that's when I had this other moment of like, again, I can't bring her back, but the gifts she gave me, the things she taught me, like you never realize how much your parents teach you, even without like intentionally teaching you, even if you learn from like their mistakes and stuff. I was like, oh, like there's this whole, like I could write a book of things that she has taught me through her actions and her words, directly and indirectly.
Hello. Writing a book. Hello. Just kidding. I'm just as performers, as artists, I'm like, that sounds like the perfect thing that you should do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough, because it requires a lot of discipline, but I think, whatever lessons that my mother taught me or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I this is who I am though. Like whenever I hear somebody going down a path of a creative project, I'm like, wait, don't slow down. That actually might be the thing. I don't know. I'm just trying to inspire,
Yeah. No, I would be interested to see how that book would come out, but
I did write, I wrote
the whole discipline thing
is the tough one.
It's probably much easier now that I'm on the other side of grief now, where it's kind of like you can put a Band-Aid over it, and if you lift the Band-Aid, you're like, oh, there's still a scab there. But at that point, it was like it was wrapped up in gauze, and it was like, don't touch that gauze or it's gonna tear open. In Yeah, and I think she'd love that too, because she was always really proud that I had moved out here to chase my dreams and
I think you have, again, like,
face
this
my fears and stuff.
You have such a unique voice, and such a your perspective is different but important. Your voice needs to be heard, and I think stages, a couple hundred people here and there. I think that the potential to be able to reach, people that this would be very meaningful for is so much more powerful in the written word. I'm just saying, and again, yes, the discipline is the hard part.
Yeah.
But I
think written or spoken, it's going to reach people differently.
Sure.
Either way, because I think when you speak it, you can kind of see the emotions in it.
Sure.
As opposed to when you read it, you can kind of place your own emotions in it. But yeah, it's been interesting to see the way like I can connect with people from what I'm saying on stage, and people will come up and be like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry for your loss," and I'm like, "Don't be. I wouldn't have any material right now. She was dead."
Sure.
You know, like but it's weird to take condolences from people you've never met or that have never met her, and like they mean well, but it's also like it's the balancing act of like still like the more people are like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," the more guilty I feel because it feels like you're exploiting it when you're not. You're just trying to you're trying to cope with it.
But I cope with it. But I would also say like there is absolutely nothing wrong with exploiting your own pain. No, really, that's who we are as artists. Is we are like, oh, this bad shit happened to me. I'm gonna make some money on that. Where other people are gonna spend money to go to therapy or take drugs or whatever.
Yeah.
It's almost shamanic, the things that we're able to do. And it just happens to be a shame that we live in this commercial industry where it's like, I have to figure out a way to make a paycheck from it. But my condolences to
Thank you.
I'm going to wrap this up in the most awkward way possible because that's who I am. I really am super grateful for you talking to me about this. And when this gets up, you can send this to be transcribed and have at least an hour and a half of a book or whatever, and also your material. But thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Okay, I'm going to go cry now, guys. Bye. Hey, thanks for being with us. This has been another episode of American Griefcast. You can follow us on all social media at American Griefcast. It'd be wonderful if you could join our Patreon and kick us a few bucks so that I can pay all the people involved in this. Have a wonderful day.